Hi, welcome back. So very interested to see you all back here in the MySQL session number 2. So you can see here, to open a new script, just press on the SQL script over here, right? If you click here, it will open a blank SQL. Then as usual, if you just press Ctrl S or just press on the button save, then it will open up where you want to save. You can define your location, you can give the script name, and it will be a .SQL file, right? So whatever we are learning here basically in this MySQL workbench will not apply apple to apple for an Oracle database which is using SQL, maybe for Databricks, maybe for any other database, right? SQL administrator database, Microsoft SQL, all of those, but the core concept remains the same. So if you use this, you can go understand the other one. Writing query is also kind of very similar. If you're writing in BigQuery, if you're writing in any other, maybe if you're writing in Starburst, anything, right? So the queries or the functions being used varies very slightly, but you will get the entire flavor of how to write the SQL query and get the required output from it. So this is very important for a data analyst and a data analytics position, basically for a data scientist as well, and for data engineers as well. So everyone there is using SQL as the predominant language for most of their use cases of solving real problems, right? So this is how the interface looks, and this is how we can open a new file and start scripting whatever we want to. Then we have a system database, that's the default database that we have, right? So in the system database, if you just open it, you can see what are all inside this. So this is a normal terminology. These are 4 things which are available by default in the workbench: the tables, views, stored procedures, and functions. So these are all things which will go one after the other once we kind of learn the basics required for the MySQL as a language, right? SQL as a language. So here we have the system config, the tables. This is only table that we have inside this particular system config. If you go inside this, you can see the columns, you can see the name of the columns, everything. So we'll just create a basic database now, just to understand how the database layout looks, what and all are the information that we get from a database, how to understand those, what are the kind of data types that are being used for this database. All of this will be learning now, right? So this is the window where you get your databases. So whenever you refresh after you create a database or have changed something, then once you refresh, it will come up here. So that's one thing. Then we have a window down here. Here you see here. So this particular place shows us what queries we have written and how they have basically completed, executed. So if they have successfully executed, we'll get a green check over here. If it's not, then it will be a red cross mark over here, and then you can see the message why it has failed. So you can read and try to understand why this particular thing has failed and what is the error, and you can go search back in Google or back in any GPTs, so to say, and then get the answer for why it has gone wrong. That's at the later stage, right? So that's also possible. This is something which we have as a feature, don't limit. So if you want the output to show only 10 rows, then you can do so. Or you want don't limit means it will show the entire. If say you are querying a database which has 1 lakh rows, then it will show all 1 lakh rows, which will be kind of clumsy and too much, but you'll have to think through and get the answer, right? Sometimes just the 10 rows would be enough, but sometimes you might write the query in such a way that you will get an output of top 10, top 50, or maybe 100 rows or something like that. Then it may be useful that you keep it as don't limit as is, right? This is just to beautify. Try writing script like an English language continuously in single line and press this button. You will come to know that how it works, right? It kind of forms the syntax by giving the spaces, tabs, and all of those things, and it makes it query looks so easy to understand, kind of thing. So normally we have to write in that way, but yeah, that is done by MySQL here like that. So these are the 2 things which we need to know. This is, you can also control enter, press control enter, but here you have, if you are on a particular line, you can press this to execute that particular line, right, under the keyboard cursor. So if you have the end point, like we write say something like this, select and then say star from say some table name, okay, ABC. This is not existing as of now, so that like this, and I put a semicolon here. So it understands that this is the particular endpoint of this. So I'll just enter this, run this. So see this ABC, I've got an error over here. This error says that no database selected. Select a default DB to use, and then you have to write a query. I have not selected any database, or I don't have any database other than the system database, right? So that's why this is getting failed. If this remains in the second line as well, and if you run it, this also works very similarly, because it knows that this is a start point and this is the end point. So this semicolon is the syntax which we have to follow for every SQL, right? So that's it. Then if you want to execute it by this command, basically that means you have to select it. So whatever you have written, for example, we had written this much. So if we kind of select the entire thing, or if we have say 50 lines or 100 lines, if you select the entire thing and then run, that means it will execute the entire selection. So that's one option, right? So these are the basic two options, and then this is how we create file and save file. If you want to open a file, you can just go here, Control Shift O, or from here you can just open a SQL script that you already have, right? So this is the basic layout for our MySQL workbench. Now let's understand. Now let's create a very basic database, okay, and then try and figure out what are the kind of databases that we have and how we can kind of use and see what is there inside the table, and how a particular table is constructed inside MySQL and all of these things, right? So just to use or to create a database, just you think of creating a database, it's like an English language. So you write create database. So you can program a code along with me so that you will also learn through this exercise. Example DB, right? So I put the semicolon. I've just pressed Control Enter. So you see, created a database example DB. So this is as simple as it is. So now in the right hand side, if you see, I'm not seeing any database as such, but I refresh here, I see an example DB. If you open it, there will be nothing. The table is empty, there is no drop down, the view is empty, and everything is empty. It's only a database that is created, right? The first step. So you can run everything in one single go as well, right? Now that I've created a database, now let's use this database. Use example DB, right? So again, Control Enter. So see, 0 rows affected. Now that also executed successfully. We have a green tick over here. How much time did it take to execute this particular result is available over here, right? So that's the thing. Now that we are using this example DB for all our future works that we are going to write here in this particular script, right? So for that, we're just create again. Now we are not creating database, but we are creating a table, say users. Okay, we'll create users and we'll create posts. So everyone now is in Instagram, Facebook, and every kind of social media, right? So we are creating some users, fake users, and the posts that these users are making. So we'll get to know the relationship very easily, and we'll get to know the data types and other things which are there available as a feature in this MySQL workbench, right? So users, and then I'll just put a bracket over here. And then we'll start say user ID is one column, say user ID, okay, and it will be an integer column, and I want to say auto increment. So these are no need to confuse yourself very much. This creating database is more of a data administrator's kind of a job. For a data analytics person or data scientist or a data engineer, this would not be so useful. But to know the features available, for example, if you get to work in say Oracle DB or say Microsoft SQL databases, or maybe MySQL itself or any other database which uses SQL, the kind of interface or kind of things which are there inside that database will be similar. So you go and check what is this, and you get to understand that these are the number of tables which we have, these are kind of relationships between the tables, and this is the data, this is the primary key, all of those aspects, right? So we are just doing it by hands-on practice, that's it. So that it will be very easy for you to remember and to recollect in future, right? So this auto increment, and I'm defining this as a primary key, right? Primary key, right? So this is the first thing. So this is the first column. Similarly, now what you have to do, you have to kind of create different number of columns that is required. So let us create two more. Say username, username. Okay, this will be a variable character varchar. Okay, with you can give number of characters it can take, at max 50. So varchar can take 50 characters. So now this is a constraint that I'm giving. So these are not necessary, right? These constraints that you're seeing, it's not necessary, it's not mandatory as such, but yeah, you can always give these constraints. So this will be there. So if not null, unique, that means username should not be null. There should be a username present in the input data that we are giving to the database. If it's not there, it will be an error. So this will not be entered, or this will not be going inside the database and getting stored in the database for future use, right? That will not happen. So every name should be unique that goes into the database, and every name should be present. It should not be blank. So that's the not null, unique criteria that we have. So let's put just one more. Email, and again it's a varchar. Okay, and then let's say 50. Okay, you can put 60, you can put 30. It's not necessary to be anything. Again, let's put not null as a constraint and unique as a constraint. Okay, so these are the three columns that we have. Okay, you can create many more columns. This is just a brief understanding of how to create a database. We'll be working more on the data manipulation language, DML, not the data definition language that we are seeing here, the DDL. So in the data manipulation language, you'll be more interested in querying an existing database, right, and getting the required answers or getting the required data just to head start our analysis on the data. So that's the main focus area. So here we have created these three columns, right? We can create timestamp columns format as this is varchar and integer. We can create based on timestamp. We can update those timestamp based on daily things. All of those we can do hashing and a lot of other functionalities. But yeah, don't worry on those things because we are just understanding the database right here. So this is a table that we've created with user ID, username, and email. Right. So let's just, if you want to just beautify, let's try beautifying it. Yeah, this is how it is. See, okay, and then let me run this because I'm within this semicolon, and I've ended this semicolon here. The MySQL workbench will understand that I am running this for these particular 4-5 lines, right? So if you just run this, so it's creating a table. So it has created a table, and it's just created a table, right? If you refresh now, you see there's a drop down coming in the tables, and you have users in the table, but there are no columns. There are 3 columns, but the columns do not have any data per se. So that's the thing, right? And then we have a primary key. That's important. So primary key is nothing but the key used to identify a particular person, like you have Aadhaar number. So every individual in the country will have a unique Aadhaar ID, right? So that's the primary key that cannot be same for 2 persons, driving license number or anything of that sort, right? So similarly, we have here a user ID. If there are 1 lakh users, each of those users will have a different user ID, right? So that's the key understanding over here in the primary key part of it, right? So now we have created users as a table. Now let's create the second table. Create similar fashion, very similar. Create table. I'm not writing in case, it's not case sensitive, but it can be written in this way also. Just showing the difference. Post, and then starting the bracket, and then we'll write similar to the one, we'll write post IDs so that each have, so int, and then say let's do an auto increment, which not the always the case, but yeah, for now, for the example, we'll just make it auto increment so that we are not entering the data for that. Okay, so we have the post, sorry, here spell check, post id, right? So this is the primary key over here. Then we have the user id, because we have to interact with the user's table, right? So that's a basic idea. That's how these databases, or even if you go for any analytics tool like Tableau, Power BI, or any tool per se, they all use a kind of data model in them, right? If you are more interested in those things, I'll come up with future sessions on these data models and things. Please mention those in the comments if you're interested to learn on this, right? So we have user ID, and again we can take this as an int. Then let's just add one more, say title, let it be a varchar. So again here also you can just go on and on and on with the number of columns, number of features you require. Let the title be only 30, right? And it should not be null at least, right? So these are 3 columns that we are creating over here. You can have booleans, that means true, false. Let's take one more boolean so that you get to understand another data type, published. Say we have published, then that is boolean, a boolean type, and you can also mention a default condition here, saying default is equals to false, right? Default is false. So this is there, and the timestamp is another data type that you have, right? So these are all the data that you have. Now, as this is a second table which is kind of related to the first table, right? So we have the post, for example, we have say users. Okay. So users, say there is a user say A, user say B, user say C. So there are 3 users, okay? And then we have something like a post. Like these particular users are publishing some posts in their social media handles, right? So A has posted say 2, B has posted 1, and C has posted 3 posts, right? So that's how it has been done. Now these users here and the users over here are related, right? These two are interrelated, this A and this A is related. So from here we come to know this, for this user A, the user ID is say 1 2 3, and for this it's 2 3 4, just an example, and maybe 4 5 6. So these are unique user IDs. So we come to, this is the particular user, this is a user name, and this is the user ID that we have, user ID, right, that we have here. Similarly, we have here this is a user name which we may not be using, but say we'll be using user ID here, user ID. So user ID for 1 is 1 2 3, and here it is 2 3 4, like this. So we have this user ID here. Now, so we get the relationship, right? Here it's a primary key, because so here it is a, here if you see here it's a primary key, it's known as a primary key. Why? Because there is no repetition. A as a name user is only once, B as a user will be only once, but here the same thing becomes a foreign key, right? Here it becomes a foreign key. Why? Because here users, or the user ID is kind of repeated 1 2 3 2 times or 3 times, the number of times the particular user has posted something, the same user ID repeats. So this is a primary key and this is a foreign key in this table posts. But here is the interesting thing. Now each of these posts is individual. I have posted some travel related thing the first time, posted some comment on the second time, posted something else on the third time. So each time I create a post, the post ID is unique. So this is unique, right? So I have some some number, say 1 2 3, not 1 2 3, similar to that, but something different, some new number. For every post there will be a unique number, say, okay, 9 3 2, maybe 1 1 4. So every post will be having a different number. So this is interesting here. So now this is the primary key for this particular table, because this is unique, and from this we can identify, we can kind of identify that this particular post ID. If I know the post ID, I can say which is the post, who is the user, and what are the other details, title, whatever. So these are the two tables that we are speaking about. Okay, so one is the posts as a table, right, this table, and one is the users as a table, this one right here, right. So here we have the primary key. Hope you understand what's the primary key now, and here's a foreign key. So this is the connection. Now this is the connection that we are going to create inside the MySQL query, right. So now here we are going to create that relationship. So foreign key, so we have a foreign key, which is a foreign key. So we have created wow, user ID in this particular table is a foreign key that I'm referring to, and the reference users, the table above, and in that I have the user underscore ID. ID. So this is a particular thing, and now comes another condition or constraint: on delete cascade. So there are no errors as such, and we have kind of done. Now we run this by, if you select, let me run this time a different way. I'll just select everything, I'll run this. So this is created. Now what is this on delete cascade? So let's go back to our worksheet here and see what is on delete cascade. So here, if you see, there is a user 1 2 3, right. Here we are speaking about something. There is a user 1 2 3. Okay, you have user 1 2 3 whose name is A. Now for example, this user leaves Instagram handle or say Facebook handle, so no more a user of Facebook, right, or no more a student of a school, or no more a employee of a company, whatever. Okay, you can think of it any way. So this is the users table, which is the primary table, right. Here we have the primary key, right. So this is a primary table of users. This is a parent table basically, and so this table here, if I say this particular table, this is the parent table. Okay, this has the details of who the users are. So this is the parent table. Similarly, if I say this is a child table, now what will happen is, now if I delete this particular table, this particular user 1 2 3 A from, or this particular user leaves the particular organization, and on delete cascade, what it will do is, if the parent is deleted, if there is no more a parent of that particular instance, then all the particular child will get deleted automatically. That is a cascading effect, right. All this will get deleted automatically. So this is on delete cascade that we have, right. So this will work in this particular direction, that is the parent to child direction. So from the parent table to the child table as a direction. So this is what we have here, right. So let's go back now. So this is also created. Now we have created the basic things, that is 3 particular columns in your users table, and say 4 particular columns in the posts as a table, right. So let's now put data into this. So insert into users. So you can have two methods basically. This is how you can, if you specify the column name, say username, this is not the order in which we have created, right? We have created first is user ID, second is username, third is email, right? But now I'm mentioning that this is username, this is user ID, and this is the email, right? And then closing the brackets, and then saying values, and then opening up the bracket, and then putting the data. So username, say John, comma, user ID, say 123, comma, email ID abc.@gmail.com. So again, this is a varchar, so within the quotes. So I've put this like this, right? So you can go on putting like this, again one more data. So we'll enter one more data using another method. So this is how we'll add one data over here, and then we'll run this. So one row might have been affected now. Yeah, one row affected, and the data is entered into a system. So again, similarly, I'll just copy this entirely and paste it over here. I'll not use any of this. I'll just put insert into users values. Now I'll have to mention this in the particular order that I've created. So I'll put 1 2 3 in that place, or 1 2 3. I have to create 2 3 4, otherwise this will give an error. You can try and do all of those things basically. And then second one, I have the username, so now Dev, and the email ID, say ac@gmail.com, right? So this is the second thing. So let me enter this. So one row is affected. Now we have put two data points into that particular table. Similarly, let's put two data into the post table as well. Okay? So we can go by the second method, which is the easier method because we are doing it manually here. So let me just copy paste this and then put here insert into posts, values, user ID. Let it be post ID. I have to put the post ID first. So post ID will be say 901. User ID is say 234, who is Dev, and the title is say accident, and we have published, say by default it's false, so I'm not putting it anything, right? False or true or whatever. By default we'll take it, and then yeah. So now this has got affected. So number of columns that I've put is not matching. So there was one data point here. You can put a comma over here, and then put inside the bracket. You can give the values, second row, third row, fourth row. You can go on and on and on like this, right? So let me just put so one more data point, say two more data points. For 901, there's say one more post ID 90921 created by the same person. Accident 01 is reported, and this is say true. And let's put comma, and then put 931 comma, put by user 123, and comma, this is picture, right? So this is another. I've entered, okay, sorry for the spell check, okay. So two rows affected, two duplicates, 0 warnings. So 0 warnings, right? Two duplicates because of this 234. This has there for 2 times. That's why. So now that we have created our table with this relationship, now let's refresh and understand the structure. This is just to understand the structure in this particular video, right? Session. So if you see now, we have two tables. We have the columns inside these tables. Okay. Now to understand the database, in the database you have the information button, I button here, right here. So click on that particular thing. It will open up and it will give you an explanation of what is the size and what are the things first. Tables. What are the two tables available? What is the engine it's running? Not very useful for us as of now, but yeah. Details regarding this. Which are the columns which are there? So in any of the database, you can see post is one table and users is the other table. So we have 3 columns in users and 4 columns in posts. So that's how it is there. Sorry. Okay, posts and users. Then we have the type of data that is there, and is null allowed or not. If yes, then yes. If no, that is a constraint that we have defined, right? What are the privileges that we have basically, and what is the extra function that we have added, auto increment kind of things, right? If that is empty, it will increment it by 1 number, right? Then we then have the tables posts and users. We have primary key, it's named as primary because it's primary key, post ID in the post table, user ID, unique, no, it's a primary key user. In the user table there is a primary key, that's a user ID, right? So for these columns, these details are also given, right? There are no triggers, views or functions that we have created over here, right? So that's not available. So we get to know which are the primary keys and which are the columns and what is the kind of data type and all of those details in this particular place, right? You can also go here, you can also see in the foreign keys over here. So there is one, if you click on this, you will see target is user ID to map to user ID, users user ID, right? So this is post table, so it's mapped, the foreign key is mapped to the key user ID in the other table, right? So you have that here. In the users, if you see, there is no foreign key because posts has is the foreign key and users has the primary key, right? So that is the kind of information that we have here. Okay, so with this, let's just check one more thing, says just to introduce to the data manipulation language. So first it starts with select, right? What to select? Select everything, that's star. So from, because we are already using example DB, so we have to just give the table name posts and then just run it. So get to see these 3 post IDs and the title and published 0 or 1, whatever. So we have created this, right? So that's already available. So this is how we are just checking it. Similarly, you can check select star from users. Run this. So you have 2 users, user ID, username and email, right? So this is the kind of basic interface that we have, and this is the functionality. So here you get the output, right? You can kind of download the output. This function is available even though you're using DB or you're using any database, right? In Microsoft MySql or any data administrator database, these functions are available, right? Once you run the query, we kind of extract. We can take this data out, import, export, right? Save this, export this. So export option will be there, and then you can mention the available data types which are there, whichever format you want, and then you can save it and start your analysis maybe in a third-party system which is different from SQL. That it totally depends on you, right? So this feature is available, which is important, and we should have that in mind, how to take the data outside. So thank you for watching, and please subscribe to the channel Illuminate. We'll be coming with the next session in continuation with this, where we'll head start with our query.